Well, welcome everyone to another workshop here at the test camp. This is FTCE Elementary Education K-6 Mathematics. Let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Now, those of you joining us live online, we wish you could be here in person, but of course you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime, and we'll include as many as possible in the discussions. And if you join us directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, of course you have an advantage because you can pause and restart or replay that video anytime. Again, this workshop is for the elementary education test. And most of you here today, you said you've already scheduled this test, is that right? Yes, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and repeat your question for those who are listening to the recording. Yes, we are going to cover all of it. Yeah, so as you'll see, we're going to cover all the competencies on these 4 tests, but in this workshop, we're just going to cover mathematics. Okay? All right, we'll look at that. We'll look at the others later on too. Right, you're welcome to stay for those. Okay, so you're likely to know that around here the motto is prepare, practice, perform. Everyone who has successfully completed the training has passed their tests, and that's because test taking is a skill which requires practice. And this is the only place to learn and practice the test skills. So to prepare here at the test camp, that means to understand yourself. You take an honest assessment of how well you know the test content, but also your testing skills and your confidence. We start by learning the test blueprint. And many of you have participated in the career workshops. How many have seen these before? Okay, quite a few of you. You watched them on demand, right? I don't recognize too many of you. Okay, so you watched them online. Good. Well, assessing your knowledge of the blueprint, that's a first indicator of how well you're going to perform on your test, because now you know what the content is going to be, and you also know the rules. You know how many questions and so on, and we're going to cover that here today. It's also a good start for creating what we call My Study Plan. This is a schedule that includes reviewing and studying the test content. All right, well, let's learn about that blueprint. Here's an overview of the entire elementary education subject area exam. Notice that your exam is just one in a series of 4 individual tests, and every one is different. And that's why some teacher candidates decide to schedule 2 days to complete the exam, rather than passing all 4 tests in just one day. Have you heard of this? Does anybody have any experience with that? Yes, can you tell us about that, and I'll repeat it for those who are listening in on the recording. So you do know of people who have taken 2 parts on one day and then scheduled for the second. Do you know if it cost anything extra? You're not sure. And neither am I. It changes from time to time, so that's something you definitely want to check. But that is a long time to be there. I'm looking at, over 4 hours there, 4.5 hours. So something to consider. Now your mathematics test, you can see down there at the bottom, that's 40 questions, and the time allotted is 70 minutes. So nearly 2 minutes allotted for each question. And these are separate tests. So it's not like you can make up time on one or the other. You'll have the full 70 minutes. Usually time is not a problem on these, because in the training you know how to put yourself on a pace for success, because you decide when to answer a question and when to save it for the next pass through the test. So that's one of the testing skills we practice over at the testing center. You'll figure that out. What we're going to start with here today, though, is identify the types of mathematics questions you can expect to encounter on the test. Now, not the format. We know that all the questions are multiple choice. We're identifying the mathematics competencies that are used to construct questions. And on this test, there are going to be 6 separate competencies. And we isolate each competency on our individual quizzes over there at the training center, because when you take the quizzes, that'll help you know where you might want to go and review or study. Does that make sense? And by the way, which competency on this test was not on the GK or the general knowledge test? That's right, teaching was not. Right. Instructional strategies and assessment for elementary students, yeah, that was not on the GK. All right, well, let's take a closer look at each competency, starting up there at the top with numbers. Now, you're going to find on the test information guide, which is published by the state, that these are the main concepts associated with questions about numbers. You have to prove your competency with these skills, but also with place value, rounding, and estimating. Right, and later in the workshop, we'll talk a little bit more about that test information guide. All right, well, let's take a look now at a couple of sample questions based on this competency. All right, so it's clear, right, why this question was created from the competency numbers. And why do I keep saying that? Is because the test writers, they all meet as a group and they're told, you need to write us some questions based on this competency numbers. Okay, so what do you see here? Right, percents, fractions, decimals. Again, a numbers question. How about just an answer set? Probably going to be a numbers question, and it is. And there's dozens of these types of questions on the quizzes over in the training center. The next competency then is algebra, and this might be the easiest concept to identify. How can you identify an algebra question? What are you going to look for? Variables, there you go. Variables or equations. Yep, now you found an algebra question. All right, how about this one? Right, also algebra. And one more. Remember, we're not trying to solve these, we're just trying to match them with the competencies. Boy, here they want you to write the equation, it looks like. This is definitely one you would mark and save. Too much reading, too many steps. You just don't want to stop your momentum during the test. Another type of algebra question involves this, the coordinate plane. Do you remember this from middle school, some in high school? Okay, so why in the world would they have you do this back in math class, the coordinate plane? If you don't remember, if it wasn't explained completely to you, it's about movement. For example, if there's a point up there, if you're starting at 0, what do you need to know to move to that position over time on a two-dimensional? This is just two-dimensional here. So you need to know the position of the point, and you need to know the direction you're going in. So remember, we called that ordered pairs. That was the position, and the slope was the direction. And again, there's quizzes designed to test your knowledge and get you to review all this over in the training center. All right, so the next competency then is geometry. If you had to explain geometry in just one word, maybe to elementary students, what would you say? What are we studying, kids? Shapes, good. So let's look at a couple sample questions here, starting with just a set of answers. So even without the stem, it's pretty clear that this is a geometry question. Let's try another one. Same idea. So again, geometry questions are pretty easy to identify. The next competency then is measurement. And there are several approaches to determining if a question is based on measurement. The one word that defines this competency is units. So geometry is shape, measurement is units. So think about that when you come up on a certain question. This is probably what you're going to be measuring. So we've got height. What's some examples of height? Inches, feet, stories, that sort of thing, I guess, right? How you measure height. How about weight? Pounds, right? Grams, kilograms, tons. Distance. Is distance the same as length? And how about speed? How about this question right here? Right, this is one of those rate times times things, right? This is a measurement question. All right, how about this? The classic Susan wants to paint a room question. Remember this one? That's geometry because you have to know the shapes. Okay, so now this is that's definitely one you want to mark and save, right? All right, now here's an interesting one. You have a shape, but you're being asked to measure it. So I guess you could say that's probably geometry. You need to know something about the shape. But again, that's not important. You're not tested on that. This is just trying to help you so that you know where you might want to review and study. So here again are the first 4 competencies. Does everybody remember the 5th competency? Don't say it out loud. Go ahead and talk about that at your tables. Give yourself a break from me. Uh, and see if you can come up with that 5th one. I think we all know what it is. But see if you can come up with the types of questions that might be involved from that competency. And we'll come back and discuss it as a group. All right, for you folks joining us today live online, if you would, go ahead and share your thoughts, and we'll include them right up here in the discussion. And if you're joining us by the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, this might be a good time to pause the recording and think about this competency, which, by the way, I'm sure you know is data. So what's included in data? You might think about the past, measuring data from the past, and data of the future. All right, we'll be here when you restart the video. I'm sure everybody knows this 5th competency was data, right? Everybody's got that? Okay. Well, here at the test camp, we identify these types of questions easily because they're just simply a report of the facts. Geometry, shapes. Measurement, units. Data, facts. All right? And if it's facts about the past or the present, that's statistics. What if you're given a set of facts about a prediction of the future? What are we going to call that? Probability. It's pretty much that simple. And here's an example. Many data questions include images, like tables or charts, right, or lists. Could be, sure. Here's another example. Right, so definitely want to mark and save, and the reason why we tell them anytime you see an image, that's one you want to mark and save. You'll learn why over at the training center. Another data question that's very popular is central tendency. Starting to remember this? What does this mean in simple terms? Central, in the middle, right? What tends to be in the middle? Do you remember these? 3 different ways to decide what's in the middle. Right, here's an example. Test question. All right, in a few minutes we're going to discuss the best resources for going back and reviewing. You don't need to pay a lot of money to do that. We'll show you in just a moment. All right, and that takes us to the final competency that's included on the Florida subject area exams, and that is teaching. So expect questions related to both instruction and assessment. And here's an example of a question related to instruction down there at the bottom. Starting with the answer set and then go to the top. And here's a question related to assessment down there at the bottom. And then look at the question up top. So that is a brief overview of the competencies, what we could cover here today in the workshop. Much more is being talked about over at the training center, including the activity guides that fill in all the gaps for you. What do you think this set of data represents? Speaking of data, yes, the number of questions that are represented by each competency on the test. So I wonder what implications this might have for a study plan. Do you know the percent to pass for this test? Okay. Yes, it is 70%. Now, does that seem pretty high or pretty low? Remember, this is not a test created by a teacher who's trying to teach you the math. It's created by the state to try to see if you know the competencies. Right, so let's do some math. Since you need 70% to pass, and we said there were 40 questions, you can assume that a passing score requires how many then? Ooh, we better get this. 7 times 4, right, 28. Right, all right, you knew it. Or another way to look at it is about 3 out of every 4-ish, okay? Or another way is you could answer 12 incorrectly and still pass. So during the training we say, go find your 28. All right, another way to look at this would be, which would you choose? All right, do the number of questions in each competency make a difference to you when you're trying to study for these? Or do you study your preferred sections first? Or do you do the challenging sections first? All right, how do you work it out? What is your study plan for something like this? We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Again, thank you for joining us today live online. Share your thoughts, and we're going to include them right up here in the discussions. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this is going to be your last opportunity to pause the recording and list some of your thoughts about how you might review and study for a multiple choice test like this. We'll be here when you restart the video. If you've participated in the other workshops, you remember that we've agreed there's really no best approach. Everybody has their own personal way of going about this, but we do need to review and study. We do need to do some more preparation. And to prepare for this test, well, you joined this workshop, so give yourself credit for that. You've gained some knowledge, I hope, about what to expect. Has it been worth your time? Well, good. Thank you for that. Another way to prepare is to select the tools you might need or the resources and the best and most reliable resources for guaranteeing that you're going to pass. So expect to see this sign along the pathways during your test skills training. These are up there from the people who have gone before you. They like to write encouraging messages, and we post them up for them. And their message is loud and clear about this. It's don't spend a lot of time and money on expensive resources. You just don't need them for this test. Commercial webinars are a good example. Avoid paying for free test information. Avoid paying for free strategies. We had all that today. Certainly you wouldn't have to pay somebody for-profit webinar. Expensive tutors and tutoring companies might be an option for more challenging tests, but this curriculum only goes through 8th grade. So maybe for trigonometry or calculus or pre-calc or something, maybe a tutor, but certainly not for something like this. Overpriced study guides are also sold for profit. Anybody have any experience with these? What are they costing out there today? $35, $30, $35? More. $40 or more. Okay. Well, a more effective and inexpensive resource then is textbooks, and this is what we recommend. Now that you know the competencies being tested, you can use the textbooks to go back and review and study, right? And over at the Testing Center in the My Resources area, you can find the most popular and up-to-date tools listed there. Right? Again, many resources are either free or very inexpensive, like that study guide. You can get a used copy there. I think it says for about $5. So instead of investing time and money on resources, those who've gone before you say, invest in yourself. Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence and expect to gain personal independence. And you can pass these skills on to your students. Now your pass here provides admission to these training areas. You can see up there at the top is what's called My Test Area. This is the activity that enables you to check your understanding of the blueprint and everything we've talked about here today. You can also take a pre-test before the training. This is the Test Camp problem solving system. Up there at the top, that first step probably looks familiar. We identify the type of question by the competency. Right, and we've been doing some of that today. A whole lot more training available to you over there. Quizzes and tests provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while you're assessing your test content knowledge. So you're getting both at the same time. And the quizzes are based on the competencies. Yes, ma'am. There's a question right over here. I'll repeat it for those listening on the recording. Yes, you get multiple attempts on the quizzes. They're going to be different each time, randomized, yes. And down there at the bottom, you might see it's kind of small. There's a combined quiz too, so it's like a mini quiz before you head on over to the test area, which has the practice tests. These are constructed with features just like you're going to find on test day with a timer, that sort of thing, where you can mark and save button. And as you complete the training activities, you can earn points with that post-test too, towards a professional teaching certificate. So expect to perform with confidence that comes from knowledge and the skills earned during the training. All right, so there's no better time than now to get started. Let's go empower your test confidence.